Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Yes,
Yes,
sir.
yes, sir.
And
Yes, sir.
next will be, she's going to talk for the mission. And after her will be Mr. Prashant, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
You would have one for, one against, like that.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Yes, sir. That's the order.
So it's going to be 4 plus 2 plus 1, that order as you said.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So please
Four.
organize in such a way, tell them so that we'll go in a
Okay, sir.
smooth path. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Sir, Kavya Tandal, can you
Pardon?
start? Sir, Kavya Tandal will give the welcoming address, sir.
Yeah, Kavya Tendral is going to.
Yes, sir.
Start the welcoming address, sir.
Yeah, please.
Happy evening to everybody present today. We will now start off the final round of state debate, a part of Affinity 2020. At the outset, we wholeheartedly congratulate all the finalists of this event. We at Affinity 2020 ensure that everyone is able to showcase their talents, express their avenues of interest, and have always tried to stretch our limits. With this current scenario, we envision to provide this through an online platform, and we are extremely delighted by the response that we have received. It is all possible with the support from our management, our faculty, contributions from Dr. Bhatia Coaching Institute, Agam, the social media partner, last but not least, all the participants of Affinity 2020. It is all because of you we have converted our dreams into a true reality. Debate as a form of public speaking enables us to have a healthy discussion and also provide us an opportunity to view things from different perspectives. Now, we would like to extend a warm welcome to our beloved Vice Principal and Head of Department Anatomy, Kartaganaga Institute of Medical Science Research Center, Dr. T.L. Anbumani sir, who will be the adjudicator for this event. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for being with us despite your busy schedule. Now, we'd also welcome our beloved Principal, ma'am. Welcome, ma'am. And
Yes, thank you.
and the 8 participants of the event, and we wholeheartedly wishing you again all the best and thank you. Now, I would like to invite my colleague Adi Madhuran to introduce the adjudicator for the event.
Thank you, Kavya. We are extremely delighted to introduce the adjudicator for this session, our very own Vice Principal of Karpaga Vinayaga Institute of Medical Sciences and Research Center, Dr. T.L. Anbumani sir, who is also the head of Department of Anatomy at the institution. Dr. Anbumani sir is an extremely well-respected and beloved professor and mentor at Karpaga Vinayaga Institute of Medical Sciences with an expansive knowledge of over 21 years of experience. He has been an instrumental pillar of support, inspiring young minds of KIMS since 2009, and his extensive expertise runs from clinical medicine to embryology and human anatomy. He has completed his MBBS in Madras Medical College and did his MD General Medicine and his MS Anatomy postgraduate in Stanley Medical College. He has received the Best Teacher Award, Best Doctor Award from the Indian Medical Association, and the Unblemished Service Award from the Government of India. He is also the former Vice Principal of Chengalpet Medical College and holds 14 national and international publications. We graduates 2017 batch feel immensely privileged having such an inspirational idol judging the event, and his passion to teach the younger generation drives us to do our best. We are extremely thankful, sir, for your support and for being here with us on such short notice. Thank you, sir.
It's a pleasure.
Before we commence with the session, I would like to reinforce the rules and regulation. The motion for the final round will be constant health monitoring does more harm than good. The finalists will be divided into two groups, for and against the motion, consisting of 4 participants each. So the team speaking for the motion, constant health monitoring does more harm than good, starts off with the first speaker as Batul Jahir from Mother Medical College, Vedant Bawa, Sri Ramachandra Institute of Higher Education, Janani Priya, Dhanalakshmi Srinivasan Medical College, Vineet Lohidakshan from Government Keel Park Medical College. The team speaking against the motion, constant health monitoring does not do more harm than good, starts with Prashant S., Madras Medical College, Riya Surana, Sri Ramachandra Institute of Higher Education and Research, Kausalya N., Coimbatore Medical College, Harish A., Government Sivagangai Medical College. The event will be judged according to the scores of the jury, and any use of vulgar language shall be automatically deemed as grounds for disqualification, and please refrain from making political statements. Participants will be allowed to put forth their initial statements in the first round for a maximum of 4 minutes, one speaker after the other alternatively. So one from the affirmative team and one from the negative team will be speaking. So the speaker one for the motion, who will be Batul Jahir, will start off the session, and then it will be followed by Prashant S against the motion, and so on. The rebuttal round will take for 2 minutes each, and it will take place in the same order as before. And the closing statements will be for 1 minute each per speaker. Please ensure you strictly adhere to the time limit and speak only in English. The dais will be open for questions from the organizers and judges. In case of any dispute, the decision of the judge will be final. Thank you. And the winners will be chosen as best speaker for the motion, best speaker against the motion, and a special mention. Now I would like to call upon Tejas Krishna to introduce the first speaker for the motion. Constant health monitoring does more harm than good. For the first round of opening statements, please restrict the time to 4 minutes per speaker. Tejas, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to call upon Batul Jahir from Mada Medical College to speak for the motion, constant health monitoring does more harm than good. Batul Jahir, over to you.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah,
Yes, please.
Can I begin?
please.
Good evening, everyone. Constant health monitoring does more harm than good. What constant health monitoring actually is? It begins with screening where the undeceased or normal patients are being ruled out from the deceased by rapid application of tests, examinations, and other procedures. William G. in his book Public Health and Risk Factor has mentioned that as early as 19th century, the insurance industry discovered a connection between sugar in the urine of apparently healthy individuals and the subsequent onset of diabetes. Since then, urine analysis has become a standard component of medical exams for insurance purposes, and the medical profession added the practice reluctantly. Regionally in Tamil Nadu, it began with Varamun Kapom scheme, which was led by the government for screening communicable diseases in the PHCs. But all these were before corporates took over every aspect of hospitals. As globalization attained peak, these health checkups were introduced very primarily for attracting patients and for their very own marketing strategies. According to international guidelines, health monitoring should be satisfied 3 criteria: targeting specified age and sex, determination of number and frequency of the test, and most importantly, to avoid physical and mental harm by doing unnecessary tests. In India, reassuring guidelines with prior implementation of one-size-fits-all approach, it has become advantageous for hospitals in private sectors and their master health checkups, beating the whole purpose of screening. As a part of this, scans are often being included in pediatrics wellness checks and even in corporate wellness programs without any clear justifications, resulting in radiation exposure. The big bosses have continuously been trying to reduce normals through paid research so that many millions of normal people could be labeled as patients, which means filling their coffers. As a consequence, abnormal has become a new normal. Over-testing is leading to an epidemic of over-treatment. On the other hand, if you run a person through significantly many number of tests, then he or she is bound to be deceased. Welcome to my parlor, said the spider to the fly, would be the best way of explaining how the medical system seduces patients with the help of these schemes. We know patients who go for diagnosis to government sectors while choose to do their treatment in private sectors. The concept of family doctor is rapidly decreasing, and why? Because it has become more of a social status indicator. Laypersons are increasingly demanding objective evidence for monitoring health and for starting treatments. A geek specialist has become more popular than a simple doctor with a BP apparatus. Why has this become so? Because patients have become more self-diagnosing rather than self-awareness. Technological advancements like Fitbands and mobile apps have favored patients' mindset and diagnosis. Repeated checks for evidence-based treatments has created an awareness of these abnormalities. But inescapable further investigations have deprived happiness and produced ill health due to anxiety, depression, and neurosis. Very small abnormalities are hard to study and to rule out. But however, uneducated persons fall into mental agony for no reason. It has almost become a trap for patients whom the follow-up after these checkups is not economically feasible. Detection of these abnormalities causes jubilation to the technological, pharmaceutical, and medical industry from the commercial point of view. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, should pardon me for associating the word medicine with the term industry, for he doesn't know what happened to medicine after 377 BC. To conclude, the ship of constant health monitoring is in real threat until holes like improper understanding of healthcare and failure to educate the masses, monitoring mission of corporates replacing health vision, overruling of international guidelines, Googlites whose self-diagnosis is greater than self-awareness are being plucked. If not, constant health monitoring is going to produce a generation of worried well. Like philosopher author says, health isn't everything, but without it, everything is nothing. Thank you.
Thank you, Batul. I would like to call upon the next speaker, Prashant from Madras Medical College, to speak against the motion that is constant monitoring does not do any harm than good. Prashant, you can
Sir,
start.
one second. Sir, would you like to comment a few words? Sir, would you like
Hello?
to comment a few words on Batul's?
Maybe why not we have it at
Okay,
the
sir.
end?
Okay, sir. Sure.
Otherwise, it will be consuming
Okay,
time.
sir. Okay, sir. Sure. Prashant, you can go ahead.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Prashant, final MBBS from Madras Medical College, and this house firmly believes against the motion that constant health monitoring can do more harm than good. Let me divide the topic into three heads. One being that a disease starts with prevention being the first, second being treatment, and the third being the prognostic follow-up involved in it. First, let me go on to cite a few examples in support of my statements. As in prevention, a future where technology knows we are ill and informs the doctor might sound like a Huxley novel, but we are just around the corner. First being that the ASHA and community healthcare workers involved in door-to-door surveillance have been there from time immemorial, and that is a constant evidence of how health monitoring has done more good than harm. The second being the present COVID scenario. Constantly people check up for temperature, pulse oximetry, and also about the contacts that they've been with. And this has helped them bringing down the pandemic by a huge amount. The third, antenatal care in pregnancy. The WHO mandates at least 4 visits, and we all know how it has been beneficial in bringing down the complications in pregnancy. Fourth, the milestones and the newborn care that has been put up. It might be a multitude of guidelines that have been coming up, but then constant health monitoring in terms of the milestones achieved in every single age group has helped in bringing down the complications as a result of both mental and physical retardation. Fifth, all of us know that a multitude of diseases can be preventable, especially obesity, which has a propensity to cause much more multitude, as in diabetes, hypertension, and so on. So is the nature of prevention that can be only enforced with constant health monitoring. The second part being treatment. Let me emphasize on how the antitubercular treatment under the DOTS regimen administered by the healthcare workers has ensured better compliance of patients. And we all know how the TB pandemic has caused havoc in our society. The second being constant monitoring of the geriatric age group, especially in cases of Parkinsonism and dementia, that have been facilitated through the apps that have come up, which can help you track the patient wherever and whenever you want. The third being the family doctor or general physician concept. The very concept of a family doctor emphasizes on how constant health monitoring and constant knowledge of a particular patient by a specific doctor gives a better follow-up to it. Then, the prognostic indicators involved in it. We lose more patients not due to lack of treatment, but due to the lack of follow-up that precedes the treatment and thus adversely affects the prognosis. One such example would be the complications involved in diabetes mellitus and hypertension that are highly preventable with constant health monitoring. And we are in the month of October, which is known as the pink month for breast cancer. And any individual female which is greater than 50 years of age is definitely bound to screen herself for breast cancer. And that's how constant health monitoring in intervals can help you out. I can also add on to the advantages, wherein statistics has proven that more than 70% people who detect a disease earlier have indeed saved upon money by going on to hospitals at an earlier time and thus reducing hospital admissions. Not just this, equitable access has been ensured by the government policy by itself, wherein One Nation, One Health Card scheme has been adopted by the government from this year, wherein one health card involving the prognostic follow-up of a patient since infancy till death shall be put up in it. And again, telemedicine and telehealth have revolutionized healthcare with new apps that have come up from a day-to-day basis that can put up even calorie consumption to the least of value that's possible. Not just this, the right of a citizen, as my opponent had mentioned, that there is an inequitable access to healthcare, and that's a crony capitalism being put up by the government. Nevertheless, this has been put up under the Ayushman Bharat health scheme, and everything is covered. And there's a master health checkup even in government hospitals. On a lighter note, we wouldn't have had the subject of SPM if not for the UG curriculum that we're studying in. Thank you.
Thank you, Prashant. And I'd like to call upon the next speaker, Vedant Bawa from Sri Ramchandra Medical College, speaking for the motion.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, please.
Hello, sir. Good morning, everyone. I'm Vedant Bawa. I'm here to convince you over the next 4 minutes about how the negatives of constant health monitoring far outweigh the positive in today's scenario. We live in a technological world. Technology is a useful servant but a dangerous master, and this is more valid in this debate today than ever before. Through the many different avenues that technology offers, be it wearables or health monitoring apps, they all have major flaws, making them a threat to society at large. Let's start with the problem of fitness apps. They're all money-making machines which are unreliable, ineffective, and perform completely unrequired tasks. In fact, till date, there is no requirement to even have a doctor as part of your team when developing this app. It is completely unregulated. Using the health app is basically you following a standardized algorithm made by a 20-year-old IT expert to determine your next meal or workout. It is outrageous. I would like to now talk about one of the biggest issues of technology that has a huge impact in acting against a deterrent against constant health monitoring. In today's world, telecommunication companies are always trying to obtain patients' data, which they can further misuse to sell a service. All forms of technology that constantly monitor health are a data safety hazard in today's time. A study found that some mHealth apps do not even use any encryption when transferring data anymore. The complexity of the consent process is heightened further when mobile phones are used to record conversations and locations. For example, to determine the impact of Parkinson's disease on a patient's speech, other people who are in conversation with or meeting the patient are inadvertently having their privacy infringed upon without consent. These technological systems cannot ethically be permitted if they require the forfeit of privacy of patient data by transferring it across insecure data networks. We cannot allow the monitoring of health to lead to a situation where patient health records, treatment, and even their whereabouts are held by tech giants, telecommunication companies, the government, or are freely available for sale. It's a complete infringement. Coming to reliability. Last year, a study by researchers at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center tested 3 apps that use algorithms to determine the likelihood of cancer. The team found that even the most accurate of the apps missed 18 out of 60 lesions diagnosed as melanoma and deemed them low risk for cancer. Another point to consider is that the demographic in today's time that mainly uses these apps are of the older age group. These patients in today's date don't even know how to properly use the technology and are completely out of sync in today's technological devices. Expecting them to be able to use these devices for their own health will put further pressure on them. Releasing a tool to the public requires some thought as to how it could be misused. This potential is of particular concern in times of economic hardship when patients are uninsured and even insured are turning to these cheaper alternatives. Even wearables that everyone is wearing, like the Fitbit, have up to 25% of variation, which is unheard of in the medical sector. The body is a complex system of various processes which cannot be standardized. In patients who don't have adequate knowledge, small non-pathological deviations in data become a cause of concern and anxiety in the elderly. My own grandfather called me to ask if the 96% on his oximeter reading meant he needed medical help right now. Another aspect is the medicalization of patients' life. What is medicalization? It refers to the encroachment of the clinical sphere into matters non-medical. This intrusion into the private life of a patient, so critical for self-identity, must not be so readily dismissed. My last point I would like to talk about change in perception. A group study of elderly individuals in residential care found that participants were concerned that using technological devices to assist with frailty would lead to a perception of them being frail. This is another major psychological factor that needs to be considered. Technology is good, but we must never place technology above humanity. The day we do, we will fall. We are in the healthcare space where patient-doctor interaction are at the center for treating the disease itself. We cannot be infringing upon this. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Vedant. Next, we have Riya Surana from Sri Ramachandra Institute of Higher Education and Research.
Am I
Riya?
audible? Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, you are audible. You can start. Hello.
Respected chairperson and the audience, I'm Riya and I would like to present my views on why I think continuous health monitoring does more good than harm. Technology in the field of medicine is a new concept, sure, but it is also an inevitable concept. With time, we as people have become increasingly conscious of various aspects of our health. Walking those 10,000 steps and counting your calories is just another thing our smartphones do now. In this setting, can you really tell me we are not going to move toward a technology that will exist with the sole purpose of assuring and reassuring us about how healthy we are at any given time? Imagine being able to know your vitals at a time when we use our peripheral oxygen saturation levels like test scores now. It needs to be above 95. Anything below is just poor performance. These devices allow for patient autonomy by letting patients monitor their own vitals and lab values and adjust their lifestyle and medication to accommodate their changing condition rather than blindly following a set routine given to them months ago that may not be relevant to their present status of their condition. A form of this already exists as continuous glucose monitoring devices, which have revolutionized the management of type 1 diabetes by allowing individuals to autonomously monitor their glucose levels without having to prick themselves every time and regulate their insulin dosage, and also help prevent hypoglycemic episodes in them as well. In emergency situations, this is what will let the first responders or doctors in emergency rooms gain any sort of relevant information from a delirious patient and administer not only treatment for management, but also for its underlying pathology without waiting on tests. Now, in the setting of chronic diseases, it could help physicians determine and the patient understand the progression of the disease so as to predict the likely outcomes. Further, it could also help predict the acute exacerbations of several long-standing conditions. For example, monitoring of something as simple as the blood pressure could point toward the heightened possibility of a stroke in a hypertensive crisis. Then there are health conditions with ambiguous symptomatology or atypical presentations like that of the silent myocardial infarction in diabetics that can be detected with ease by simply checking on the recorded ECG readings of the episode instead of exhausting and cumbersome tests like stress ECGs, leading to higher rates of detection and treatment and thus lower mortality. Not only would this help us better explain to the patient their condition as physicians, this would also eliminate the possibility of falsification of symptoms by the patient. Studies show that this continuous surveillance helps reduce health-related anxiety in the patient and their concerned relatives as well. This extensive and possible universalization of documentation of this health-related data would generate enormous epidemiological data give us an insight into the incidence, risk factors, and genetic predisposition of several conditions, thus benefiting the society at large. As we enter a new era, which has birthed the field of technology-based healthcare, dominated by apps monitoring everything physical about us that can be measured, which has given rise to new possibility for research and learning and required us to establish renewed protocols to accommodate it, it is important that we accept this change instead of resisting it. We know everything online leaves a digital footprint. We've always considered it a threat to our privacy, but looking from another perspective, it satisfies our very human need to document, classify, and preserve information, meaning we will never truly lose our healthcare documents. And let's be real, no one's going to benefit from knowing about our glucose and triglyceride levels except a very dedicated physician looking for an extremely comprehensive medical history and hoping to provide you with the most accurate diagnosis. Looking toward the ultimate goal of medicine, which we all know is to prevent diseases before they arise, imagine a future of universal and constant health monitoring Imagine a future where every diabetic that came to you was a pre-diabetic with just little lifestyle change could live out the rest of his life without everyday doses of medication, without ever having to lose a limb to gangrene. Imagine a future where we reach the ultimate goal of medicine hand in hand with technology. Thank you.
Thank you, Ria. Our next speaker speaking for the motion is Janani Priya Balagangadharan from Dhanalakshmi Srinivasan Medical College.
Good evening to the wonderful jury and my fellow delegates. It is really pleasant to talk in front of you all for the motion. Constant health monitoring does more harm than good. With this pandemic going on and on, we are all in a constant worry of regarding our health, whether we are good or not. And imagine when you have a weighing scale and you step on it and you gained 1 pound, the reaction, the depression you fall into, painful, isn't it? That's how the situation is now. I read a news in BBC which stated that 2 weeks ago, an apparently healthy man passed away suddenly due to the excessive consumption of immunity boosters. And what is the underlying cause? Excessive concern towards health. And that's where the Sanskrit saying, everything in excess is harm, goes true. When we think of the excessive harm, excessive constant monitoring, what comes are the after effects, the psychological effects. And those are anxiety, stress, phobias, depression, panic attacks, and paranoia of food and whatnot. Some women even fall into irregular menstrual cycle in already their stressful life and become prone to osteoporosis. And as my opponent said, diabetic patients with their constant monitoring get used to it, but they fall into suicidal thoughts because they feel that they're not enough for it. They're not enough for their life. Some, my own family member, felt hypoglycemic after the regular checkup, even when she was apparently healthy, but she stopped to become healthy, apparently healthy, which she was not. Moving on to the psychological terms, we have all this orthorexia, hypochondriasis, and illness anxiety disorder. These terms are all new to us. A decade back, they were all absent, but now they're added to the manual of mental disorders. Why? It is because of our lifestyle. It is because of our concern. In this world of Instagram, Facebook, and Snapchat, we're all running behind this healthy body and healthy fitness, which is not, and we become the worried well. With this craze towards healthy eating and raw eating, we have all deprived ourselves the self-esteem that we are enough. We forget that we are healthy when we follow our same lifestyle. The constant dependency on a device has always lowered the self-esteem, and it has always lowered the realization of their own body. Our grandparents were apparently healthy. They all lived without all these constant health monitoring, and they were all healthy. Imagine some even didn't go to hospitals and lived their life till 80 or 90. That's how they were. They knew their body, and that's how we should be. Imagine the plight when Dr. Google and these Fitbits realize and they come between the interaction between doctors and patients. As Bathul said, imagine the commercialization between this GM or keto or paleo diets and the underground business going on. And as Vedant said, the plight of your data being online and available to the tech giants, it is all painful and it is all a scam. So I would like to conclude by saying that we see these perfectly unobtainable bodies, and that is what we are comparing ourselves to. And we should be satisfied with our own body, and we should know that anything in excess is a poison, as stated by Theodore Levitt. So be health conscious, but not health obsessive. Stay happy and stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Janani. Sir, I think your mic got... So can you please unmute your mic, sir, please?
Mine?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's on. It's on. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Can you unmute yourself, sir, please?
Yeah, he's unmuted.
I am already.
Okay. The next. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Next, we have Kausalya from Coimbatore Medical College to speak against the motion. Kausalya.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, please continue.
Yeah, you're audible. You can start.
Yes. Hello. So I would like to start with emphasizing on the importance of constant checkup on your health. As we all know, hypertension, diabetes, hyperlipidemia, all these are the major risk factors for almost any critical chronic illness that we can think of. And why is screening for these risk factors so important? Because these risk factors are manageable and modifiable ones. And if we nip them off in their buds, their complications can be prevented. Now, I would like to state a few statistics here. As we all know, India is the diabetic capital of the world and is fast progressing towards becoming the hypertensive capital as well, which is not a good sign. So I would like to tell you that according to WHO, the global prevalence of diabetes over 18 years has increased by 5%. And out of the 34 million deaths which occur due to diabetes, 7 million deaths are because of undiagnosed diabetes. Now, these facts are something that the public is not aware of. And this unawareness is what I call as ignorance. Ignorance is the root cause of this fear, anxiety, of whatever is involved with constant checkup on your health. This ignorance can be beaten by education. Educates the public on the benefits that they will reap by constant health monitoring and regular checkups instead of scaring them away with complications. Now, there are a lot of devices to keep track on your health, like you have devices, watches to keep track on your respiratory rate, heart rate, oxygen consumption, your blood pressure, glucose, even your atrial fibrillation can be detected earlier, they say. So now, since so many devices are there, I would like to emphasize on the efficacy of these devices. There is a research article which was published by Norris N on the feasibility and cost effectiveness of stroke prevention through community screening for atrial fibrillation using iPhone ECG. It was conducted for 1,000 patients, and this test was found to have 98.5% sensitivity and good specificity too, and 1.5% of people were newly diagnosed with atrial fibrillation. This same scenario in India, in rural parts of Western India, was conducted, and it was conducted with an FDA-approved electronic device, which is a single-lead ECG. There, it was found that there was an increase in 5.1% of prevalence in the atrial fibrillation cases. So, such is the effectiveness of these devices. I would like to tell you the benefits of these devices. Now, all of us know how much of time is wasted in the waiting rooms in the hospitals, right? So these devices can cut off these waiting times, because we wait for 45 minutes in a consultation, in a waiting room, just to get a consultation for 15 minutes and to get to for the doctor to tell us that all your reports are normal. So for this, we can cut off this time by using these devices, as well as cut off the transportation costs and consultation fees. And the elderly population, I feel, is the most benefited by these devices, because it is impractical to hospitalize all the elderly population in the hospital and give them 24/7 care, hospital care. But this can be replaced by these devices. And again, even in COVID pandemics, as one of my housemates stated, we had Arogya Setu app, we had pulse oximeters for the quarantine people. Wasn't it not useful? Were we not able to cut down COVID because of this? And then even not only in COVID, in any emergency condition, how many deaths have we heard of that the person did not even know that he was hypertensive or hyperglycemic and died just of a stroke or MI? Now, this can be decreased with these devices, giving you an alarm or a beep sound when something is wrong with your body, and the person is intimated that yes, something is wrong and I have to seek medical attention immediately. Then again, we have these issues of security breaching and all that. We are so well developed in technology right now, okay, and manipulating technology in a right way is the key to success, right? We can use some good, it's a very lame example that I'm stating, that Apple iPhones are more secure than Android phones. You can use some kind of software like that, which is quite useful to you. So I would like to rest my stand by stating that by educating the people, by manipulating technology in a good way, constant health monitoring is surely good and not doing harm. Thank you.
Thank you, Kausalya. And I would like to call upon next speaker speaking for the topic, Vineet Lohirakshan from Keel Park Medical College.
Yes, sir. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, you're audible.
Clear, right?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
You can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Respected adjudicator, worthy opponents, teammates, and my dear friends. I'm Vineet Lohidakshan here to speak for the motion, constant health monitoring does more harm than good. So I would be mostly summarizing the points that our team have presented. Need brings greed. If greed increases, it spoils the breed. So this is the first aspect to which I would like to draw your attention to. That is, high costs associated with constant health monitoring, which are not affordable for all. Health and medicine is a noble and selfless field that has been tainted by the capitalistic aspirations of few people that has converted the entire field into a plot of business. I'm quoting the simple example of a plain X-ray, which costs 50 rupees in a government setup, 250 rupees in a private lab, 500 or even more in a multi-specialty hospital. If a simple test like this can make such a big margin, just imagine the entire profit made by the health checkups, which includes an array of medical tests. No wonder that hospitals and insurance companies are more interested in our health than we ourselves are. Second point to which I would like to draw your attention is the mental pressure and anxiety created in the minds of people due to the constant health monitoring. Fear of invasive procedures can even result in more harm to the patient too. All this places people in a state of fear throughout their life. The peril of this pressure can even lead to the suicide of the person. A study conducted by Science Direct on COVID-19 associated suicides in India from March to June 2020 just confirms this. Out of 69 suicides reported, staggering 30 cases were due to the fear of getting infected rather than due to the economic crisis. This analogy can be applied per se to any other health condition, be it cancer or non-communicable diseases. Another impact of increased health consciousness and mental pressure is the recent trend of Google patients who do self-health monitoring and come up with typical diagnosis of brain tumor for a headache and pulmonary tuberculosis for a cough. Yes, they exist. COVID-19 pandemic has placed more dependency on many health apps in mobile, which brings up the issue of personal data protection of the user. Built with access to entire data of the user, there are high chances that data leakage can occur through these apps. Unless promptly regulated, which Data Protection Bill of 2019 has failed to do so in India. This concern was well marked in the recent events involving Arogya Setu app, as well as sprinkler data leakage case in Kerala. Another aspect is the improper monitoring, which can be due to the faulty machinery or due to lack of diagnostic skills. There is no use in spending so much for this misdiagnosis and leaving thereafter as false negatives or false positives, as both can be harmful. Remember, when profit becomes the sole driving factor, responsibility tends to be compromised. Yet another concern is the humongous load of biological waste produced as part of medical tests. Many a time, these wastes are not properly disposed of, adding to the environmental concerns. So all these points are more than enough to substantiate that constant health monitoring is nothing more than a hoax created by a conglomeration of profit-oriented hospitals, insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, and all others benefited by this. Hoping that people don't fall victims to this business strategy, I would like to conclude by stating a simple equation. Constant health monitoring means more abnormalities, maybe even due to abnormalities of the technique. This means more tests. This means, again, more consultations, which indeed means more treatment. I conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinny. Lastly, we have Harish from Government Sivagangai Medical College to speak against the motion.
Yeah, am I audible? Shall I begin?
Yeah, you can start.
Yeah, thank you. Respected adjudicator, fellow speakers and audience, good evening one and all. With the gratitude of giving me an opportunity to speak in this debate, I would like to begin my argument. As such, this motion covers a broader aspect as other speakers have well established. I would like to discuss not only about the prevention of diseases, but also amount of the economic benefits in my constructive argument. First, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Yes, when we talk about constant health monitoring, we must not ignore the fact that things like checking weight, blood pressure, blood sugar, basic routine health checkup, etc., shall actually be a better way out to prevent chronic diseases in future. In a nation like India, where healthcare facilities have been developed well, we stand 42nd worldwide. And well, it is obviously better to be prepared and prevent diseases like cancer, diabetes, mellitus, hypertension, etc. well in advance. Secondly, I would like to chiefly talk about the development of number of electronic devices and apps to monitor the health of the patient. No way the opposition can deny that the usage of these technological innovations actually help us more. Everyone can accept that yes, smartwatches are on demand, not just as a fashion statement, but also they play a vital role in monitoring the health of the individual. When we talk about stuff like checking heart rate, number of steps we walk in a day, etc., it can actually improve the cardiac health of the individual. If overdiagnosis can actually affect the mental health of the patient, then my argument would be that underdiagnosis might do the same as well. Bigger problem with underdiagnosis is the patient is actually unaware of the mental health crisis he is undergoing. Have the speakers of the other house forgotten that pulse oximetry were responsible for preventing a number of hospital admissions in the world in times of this pandemic? Thirdly, India is doing a wonderful job when it comes to TB treatment by doing continuous and constant health monitoring. RNTCP hasn't stopped there. The healthcare worker visits the house of the patient to check if the patient has taken their medicine. The stats clearly indicates that the policy of constant health monitoring by the government is a tremendous advantage. The RNTCP or the NTEP has treated nearly 14.2 million tuberculosis patients and saved the life of additional 2.6 million people by the DOT strategy. I would like to use my very own study done in Madurai under ICMR, in which 200 private practitioners participated, and 96% of the participants affirmed that TB notification is essential, indirectly suggesting that constant health monitoring is beneficial. Finally, talking about the constant health monitoring from a different perspective with regard to the sheer economic benefits by improvising screening, we can actually decrease the out-of-pocket expenditure of the patient as well as the taxpayer. This constant monitoring shall also affect the Indians' mindset about insurance. The other house has spoken so much about insurance. In a nation where medicine isn't purely socialized, 66% of the population still remain uninsured. Then what is the purpose of blaming the insurance companies? It proves to be a bigger problem. By constant health monitoring, we can make people understand their health status. Once in a while, make them understand the need of insurance programs. Also, we can educate the people more about their lifestyle factors, because as per the Indian medical ethics code, the first duty of the doctor is to provide education to the patient. In conclusion, if constant health monitoring proves to improvise the health of the patient and it comes at an expense, I would suggest the expense must be ignored. As well as we all know that only 1.1% of the GDP is being spent by the government in this nation on healthcare expenditure. What is wrong in increasing it? Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Harish.
Yeah, thank you.
This concludes the first round of the debate. Before we go to the rebuttal round, sir, if you have any comments or your thoughts on the first round.
Sir, I think your mic is muted, sir. Yes, sir. It's unmuted.
Yeah, now can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're audible.
Okay. So it's very nice of you, dear participants, that you all have brought out your points in view of supporting and against the motion. Well, I've made some judgment regarding this. Now, the next round, where I want you to emphasize with the relevant point, either in favor of your argument or to say that the others have not actually brought out why yours is better than the others. You can go comparing and you can stress upon which is very, very supportive to your own argument. And the next round, after these 2 minutes, there's going to be the final 1 minute round where you have to emphasize on and ultimately remark what is your final conclusion after your debate. So I request you to go on to the second stage, once again in the same order. Can they come? Karthikeyan? Adimadran?
Hello, sir.
Can you hear me? You can start
Yes,
the
sir.
second round.
Yes, we'll go with the same order. Batul Jahir,
Yeah.
you can start with your rebuttal round.
Yeah, without much ado, I would like to get into the points very straightly. Speaker one had insisted so much on diabetes, how constant health monitoring has contributed so much in diabetes monitoring and how it is preventing the complications. I would like to state a few statistics here. 1 in 2 people with diabetes still remain undiagnosed and are at higher risk, according to IADP at least 2019. 1.2 million deaths are occurring still in the world due to diabetes. 1.4 live births are still occurring in pregnancies due to mothers who have been complicated due to diabetes. And we do have the right health schemes, we do have the right welfare schemes, but is it reaching properly to the beneficiaries is an actual question here. And a few people spoke about technologies. Okay, let us for once consider that every citizen of India or every citizen of the world is aware of these technologies. Are your technologies really affordable by the 60% of population who are even struggling for their daily food? Okay, if that 60% of population is really affordable of these technologies, are they aware of how to check diabetes or monitor glucose or check their pulse oximeters? How do you expect a layman to monitor his pulse oximeter with the smartwatches and fit apps? And another one thing about family doctors, only because private sectors had brought so much about constant monitoring of health, the family doctors are rapidly decreasing. We obviously choose, or in general, we choose a private sector with post schemes and doctors more than a family doctor now. Where do we find a family doctor? Still, people still choosing a family doctor. I would like to quote a saying by Dr. Adar: the greatest of follies is to sacrifice health for any other kind of happiness. So I think sacrificing health for the development of technologies is making no help for the betterment of the patients. And in research, India still holds a GDP of 0.7% in R&D. So research and yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Batul. Sir, you have any points to share, or we can move with the next, sir?
I think we can move.
Okay, the next is Prashant. You can share your points.
So thank you for the question, my worthy opponent. First, I'd like to answer Batul's statements. Her first statement that only 1 in 2 were going on diagnosed and the other was left undiagnosed. Let me make it clear that at least that one person was diagnosed only because of constant health monitoring. And if otherwise, he would have been diagnosed at the time of his death. Second, whether there was a clear reach to the beneficiaries by the government scheme. The crowd in the government hospitals by itself is a proof as to how healthcare is being accessed by the public in a government hospital setup. The third thing, on use of pulse oximetry by a layman. Let me also make it clear that that is exactly why we have healthcare workers, say ASHA workers, who come door to door and check out for your pulse oximetry or other statistics. And here are a few questions. Batul had mentioned about a corporate collusion and that everything was about over-testing. Let me make it clear that the apps are not always by the private sector. For Arogya Setu is one app by the government, and there is information disseminated by the government on healthcare, as seen in the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, which has put up guidelines, and the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare that have been putting up time to time, which are again materials to access. Third thing, Vedant had mentioned about fitness apps and that the algorithms are made by a 20-year-old IT expert. Let me also make it clear here that it all goes through an ethics committee. And this ethics committee involves doctors who check up at various levels if it's fine or not. Fourth thing, that the apps are not confirmatory and that they are not replacements to doctors. They just aid in helping to come to a diagnosis or a presumptive diagnosis. And that is exactly the statement here. And again, Janani Priya had mentioned about orthorexia nervosa and anorexia. It's a technical statement here that these are psychiatric disorders and not those that arise out of constant health monitoring. Again, there was Janani Priya who mentioned about 80 years people in olden days who used to live healthy without going to a hospital. Let me also make it clear here that there was a local doctor called the Maruthuvachi or the other people, local people, who would rather help in coming to a diagnosis. Thank you.
Thank you, Prashant. Vedant, I think you can proceed.
Hello? Yeah, am I audible?
Yes,
please.
Thanks a lot. 1 second. Okay. I would now like to point out some of the completely illogical and baffling points pointed out by my adversaries. The first speaker has not solved any of the problems that we have spoken till now. The first speaker points out about obesity and other diseases. First of all, obesity is not really monitored and it does not even need constant health monitoring. Healthy diet and exercises without monitoring is enough. Our very own Indian home food is not just healthy but also nutritious. He even stated that apps without addressing the problem of them not having any medical basis. In his rebuttal, the speaker went on to say there was an ethics committee. I would like to point out to the speaker that there is no need to have an ethics committee and there is no regulation to force an app to have an ethics committee. The speaker too spoke about 10,000 steps. Many experts have already clearly said how 10,000 steps is not a marker and not specialized for all age groups. The Guardian, which even conducted a study specifically stating how this number is completely invalid for a major number of healthy people. The speaker goes on and talks about how it leads to a decrease in falsification of claims by the patients, which is completely wrong. The speaker also pointed out how it helps in research. We cannot be the guinea pigs of our own research by just handing over our medical data to companies. The speaker also made the huge blunder of saying that large companies had no use for your glucometer reading. Patients' data in the US, as we speak today, is being used to target ads at different people in America depending on the disease they are facing, which is exactly the opposite of what the speaker said. The third speaker talked about how education is very important. This house agrees with that, but that does not mean that there is a need for constant health monitoring. I would also like to point out that you are in fact handing your data over to these companies by these apps. There is no app that you can just use to act as a safeguard. The speaker 4 talks about smartwatches. As I stated, smartwatches in several studies conducted vary by accuracy by as much as 25%. 25% in the medical sector makes this data absolutely useless. Technology cannot be this widely used in the healthcare sector, and we need to make sure that it isn't.
Thank you, Vedant. Ria, you can share your points.
Respected Chairperson, thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Ria?
Yeah, can you hear? Yeah? Hello?
Yeah, you can go.
Respected Chairperson, thank you for this opportunity to speak. The first speaker mentions that these tests are unnecessary. I don't see how you can tell if a test is unnecessary without performing it, ma'am. And also, it is better to be safe than sorry, I'd say. Also, you say there are discrepancies in test reports. I think it's better to address these discrepancies instead of not doing tests to address them at all. That would only lead to a higher mortality rate. Also, you said patients are more self-aware. They go to Google, they want Google, they do their own research. But when it comes down to our health, wouldn't we also do that much work to ensure that we're in safe hands, that we're doing better research, that we're more self-aware? Also, you mentioned that patients, when they're aware of their health conditions, they become anxious. Studies show that patients more aware of their conditions with their own test results are less anxious and they don't have health-related anxiety because they are more informed. Also, the second speaker mentions that the apps, the fitness apps, that they're all corporate lies. And I see that corporations do benefit from these apps, but is it worth it to make that, does it make it any less useful? The app serves the same functions whether the corporation benefits from it or not. Also, the data hazard in hacking, I understand, but hacking needs to be restricted. That does not mean we stop all practices of telemedicine just because there is the risk of the evil of hacking. Also, patients are unable to use this app. I'd like to mention by the second speaker, I'd like to say that India has a 50% accessibility to internet and 77% of literacy, where only 42% of areas have access to healthcare. In this condition, people have access to telemedicine more than they have access to the actual healthcare centers. Also, you said patients would become more aware of their medical aspects, and I think it is good that they are more aware of their medical aspects. Going on, the third speaker mentions that there is that about an excerpt about how being aware kills the patient, but I think it's the underlying condition that matters more. Ma'am, you also said that grandparents are more healthy, but but according to statistics, the testing is only increased decrease mortality. Also, the fourth speaker mentions that testing leads to more detection and more diseases, but the proposed alternative is to only not test, and that is not detecting. And I don't think diseases stop because you stop testing them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ria. And Janani, you can continue.
So, not wasting much time, as my wonderful opponent speakers spoke about their stance, what I want to emphasize is what the first speaker, he was talking about preventable obesity, constant family physician, and everything. But remember, these are all a vicious cycle. And I would like to emphasize that about 57.44% are prevalent to hypoglycemia, and in that only 89.3 are due to the due to the constant fear of being hypoglycemic. And as Prashant stated, many orthorexia is due to the main fear of being unhealthy, and that is due to the constant checking of our own levels. And hypochondriasis, as I stated, is also excessive fear to illness, which comes as a byproduct to the constant checking. And as Kausalya stated, elderly are feeling safe to be under technology's hand. It is completely unbearable because the elderly people find that they are themselves under some technological scam rather than being healthy. And as Ria stated, health anxiety is not present. Sorry, Ria, but according to the statistics, 37% of people affected with anxiety, 18.1% are affected due to health anxiety. And science can be the mother of technology, but it cannot always help in medicine. Even though we are constrained to the positive effects of medicine and technology, we should note what it causes us and what are the side effects. And as Harish stated, like he wanted people to have more insurance. About 60 million people are under poverty. When they cannot even afford their own one square meal, how can you afford them? How can they afford to have insurance and their healthy living? So I would like to conclude by saying that we need to know ourselves, and for that we should know what our health. We should know that what is needed and what is not required, and everything in excess does harm. So I would like to conclude by saying that health is necessary, but never make it an obsession. Thank you.
Thank you, Janani. Kausalya, you can continue.
Yes. Yes, so I will like to start off with the first speaker who believes that awareness will cause anxiety. I don't know how awareness can cause anxiety, because as far as I have heard, ignorance, as long as ignorance is your best master, you can never be peaceful. So if the person is aware that, okay, my blood glucose level is so much, it is high or low, whatever, I should change my lifestyle accordingly. That will be more beneficial to him. Next, coming to the second speaker, Vedant Baba, he told a lot about security issues. Now, any app that you use has security issues. Your Instagram, WhatsApp, everything has security issues. But we are now in a technological world. All right, we have to make use of the technology in the best way possible. There are many ways, like homomorphic encryption, and where in the cloud basis, your information will be stored, and once the doctor retrieves the information from the internet cloud, it will be deleted from that. So that will decrease the chances of hacking, as you're very concerned about security. Then coming to the third speaker, who told that our grandparents lived a long life and they're very healthy. You have to look at the kind of lifestyle that they had in 50 to 70 years back. Now we are in such an environment, and we cannot revert back to the past days. But yes, we can adapt to what the situation we are living in and make the best use of it. And then she also told that these apps are not useful for the elderly people at all. Now, what about elderly people who have some neurodegenerative diseases, let's say like Alzheimer's or something? They will not be able to remember the last fall that they had. They will not be able to remember the tachycardia episode that they had. But these things will be recorded in the devices, which will help us in history taking. And then again, the last speaker, Vineet, he told that these devices are not affordable. Yes, I agree with you that these devices might not be affordable once it comes to market. There is where a government comes into play, and it has to increase the GDP, as my housemate Harish pointed. Thank you.
Thank you, Kausalya. Vineet, you can proceed now.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Please continue.
Yeah. So, as our worthy opponents had pointed out to the requirement of constant health monitoring, so we just simply, just like my previous opponent had stated, just need to know how it can be implemented in a country like India. As per Niti Aayog, 21.8% of population of India lives at extreme poverty. That is on a global basis, less than $1.25 per day. So how can we expect people who can find basic sustenance to undertake such at least occasional testing instead of constant monitoring? If government ought to intervene, I will just take the case of the highly developed nations of UK, US, which have state-sponsored insurance schemes. Why aren't even they implementing these things if these are absolutely essential? So since they are not implementing this would just mean that this is just a post lifestyle of the elite class fanciness. It's nothing else other than that. And also, I would the fourth speaker had mentioned about smartwatches. I would like to know how many of the rural people even have seen no need of smartwatches, at least basic watches they might not have even seen. So it is literally not possible. And also, where the second opponent had stated one point, that is, no one is going to benefit from our glucose levels. I think this is something very much controversial, because this health data has been exactly misused by pharmaceuticals, insurance companies, because they get the entire data and they can use it for their own benefit. And also, another is the technological aspect. That is 10,000 steps covering that was mentioned by a few. So that if we not attain that basic measures, again, that will add to our mental distress. We will be like, oh no, I didn't achieve my target. So how can I sleep? Or again, panicness. So all sort of adding up to a mental pressure. Also security. Again, I had mentioned the data security again adds to force. And one more, as my second opponent had stated, chronic diseases and use of ECG and all other testing. So as per US Preventive Services Task Force, routine tests such as ECG, chest X-ray, and full blood screening have proven to be little benefit for apparently healthy individuals and also other people. So you see the irony, that is, these tests are the most marketed one in the pretext of constant monitoring. So that has got absolutely no use. Also, I would like first speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinny. Harish, you can share your points.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah,
Yes,
you're
sir.
audible.
Please continue.
Yeah. So first, let me begin with what first affirmative speaker mentioned about the insurance companies making an advantage. First of all, I would like to mention that 66% of the people in this nation are not at all insured. Okay, our house believes in making more people insured. On the question of how people living in poverty could afford to insurance, let me ask this question again: how will those people can attain quality health care without money, without insurance? Okay, if they cannot afford insurance, they cannot afford treatment. Second, Houston Methodist Hospital has clearly mentioned that the oxypulsimeter is actually a very, very effective method, and it can be used in times of COVID for self-diagnosis. As far as the second speaker said that the health app are developed by the private companies for profit, yes, what is wrong? I do not understand what is wrong with that. Because we are living in a democratic nation, so I think people should be more responsible about choosing which app they are going to use and about the credibility issues. So I think people should be more responsible. And he also mentioned that his grandfather called him to ask if partial pressure of oxygen was less than 96, does he require medical attention? Is that not a good thing? Actually, his grandfather asked him. He did not treat himself. Okay, he was aware. Okay, and he asked him. And the third speaker mentioned about over the drug abuse. It is completely different topic. Using more drugs on the market, and okay, that is a completely different debate, and I would not even rebut that. And as far as the people who were living for a long time, I would also like to mention that the life expectancy was 49.7 years between the year 1970 to 1975. And between the year 2012 to 2016, it is 67.8 years. As in, the technology increased the life expectancy of the people in India. Lastly, the fourth affirmative speaker was talking about the cost variation in different government sector, private sector. Let me also remind him that in the government sector, the taxpayer pays the difference amount. So are we not paying 18% GST on all the medicines and other things? We are the nation with high taxes on GST. Capitalism is good and it brings about innovation. And we are also aware about the iceberg phenomenon. So let's go invent tomorrow instead of worrying about what happened yesterday. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Harish. That concludes the rebuttal session. So before we move on to the closing statements, if you have a few words.
Yeah. So again, each one of you have come to emphasize your points, and you have 1 more minute for each of you, where you bring out the key point in favor for you, and ultimately tell your goal of whether you are for or against the motion. And I think after that, I will give my own thing about either it is a must or it's going to be towards the for or against it. We will discuss it. Please go ahead.
So we'll go with the same order. Batul Jahir, you can proceed.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, please go on.
Bernard Shaw says, science never solves a problem without creating 10 more. So I would like to strongly stick to my notion that even though the scientific concept of health and monitoring introduced a vision to reduce mortality and establish a healthy society, the slogan of LGP has changed it into a corporate cosinage, creating various problems by making people economically unsound, enslaved by technology, a place for social disorder, thus leading to improper health approach. Over-testing is leading to an epidemic of over-treatment. The need for growth, for development and change is fundamental, but not at the cost of our lives. When health sector came under complete control of technology, corporates, even concept of health has become a planned obsolescence, just like made in China products. People are made ninny by unfair approach of tokenism rather than informed participation. If we continue trying to use one-size-fits-all approach, we'll end up in the sad situation where we are forced to treat a laboratory report rather than a person. As William Osler says, medicine is a science of uncertainty and art of probability. Let's focus on probabilities by uplifting human race rather than wasting time on uncertainties. Thank you.
Thank you, Batul. Thank you, Batul. I call upon Prashant to speak the closing statement.
The word constant in constant health monitoring is mistaken by my worthy opponents to be a 24/7 surveillance. For that isn't the case, and it points to a timed surveillance, which is to be doubly sure of their health status. The opposite house has clearly failed to identify how constant health monitoring can harm the therapeutic and prognostic outcomes as an anti-tubercular treatment, or maybe in a case of cancer, wherein chemotherapy post-surgery is of utmost importance. Again, in antenatal care and in newborn care, to identify complications, it is pivotal to do a constant health monitoring in different intervals, which they have failed to identify why it would not be feasible. Again, we live in a country that abides by the law of the land, and this being the case, the rights of the citizens are not violated in the pursuit of healthcare management. And again, this has been affirmed by the government through its Ayushman Bharat health insurance scheme, which is a free of cost package developed in all the government healthcare hospitals. And this has made it affordable and equitable to everyone and all. Again, lastly, I would end by emphasizing on the importance of preventive and social medicine in our UG curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you, Prashant. Vedant, your closing statements.
Hi. As I had stated earlier, as of today, the health benefits of constant health monitoring are of no comparison as compared to the negatives. Without all these various problems that we have put forward, addressed, it is a danger for forcing all our elderly to use these health monitoring systems. We should in fact work towards a future where it is safe to use these technologies and reach a place where all people get safe access to medical information. As of now, there's a lot of information without adequate regulation, and all these systems, in fact, should be banned. Patients coming to the doctor and correctly understanding their disease from the expert himself is important. We cannot just bypass this patient-doctor interaction and replace with it any form of technology, especially in this generation. Health is a relationship between you and your body. We cannot have you handing over your healthcare data to a company algorithm that does not take into account other aspects of your life. Thinking of all these scenarios in a country like India, it can be misused on a large-scale basis, and this has to be prevented. I, Vedant Baba, would like to end by saying that I'm firmly for the motion, and everyone else should be as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Vedant. Ria, you can continue.
Constant health monitoring has in several conditions become the norm and has and will help reduce fatality by placing trust in the patient, keeping them informed about their health conditions so they may act in self-awareness. This would go a long way in aiding healthcare professionals to be able to help their patients to the best of their abilities in the form of increased efficiency in emergency conditions and prevention of acute exacerbations of chronic conditions. Physicians would also be able to access detailed patient records and medical histories and thereby draw an accurate picture of their patient's health to ensure the right diagnosis. The epidemiological data so collected by these devices would also be of great significance, such as the example of South Korea during COVID, where the government took certain liberties to use this data to ensure public safety. The inclusion of technology into medicine with huge investments from multinational tech and software companies has the potential to be, as many people call it, the next big thing. Looking on to the future of continuous health monitoring, which is universal health monitoring, could help us reach the ultimate goal of medicine and lead us to a future of disease prevention instead of disease management. Thank you.
Thank you, Ria. Janani, your closing statements.
So, we are the generation who supported technology as first and now know what are its disadvantages are. So as said, every human being is the author of his own health or disease. And that is how constant monitoring will be excessive and can cause serious effects like anxiety, panic to the already stressful population and spoil the mental health. Let us all not forget that mental health is more important than the physical health itself. Let us all not fall into this financial constraint cycle and this vicious cycle of over testing, over finding of abnormalities, and over treatment. Let us all stay healthy but not stay cautious about our health. Let us all stay fit but not over obsessive on it. This generation is the generation where parents push their children into hypervitaminosis by giving excessive vitamin. So let us all not forget and be confined to what we are supposed to and know us better. Thank you.
Kausalya, you can conclude your statement.
Yes. So first of all, none of us can deny the immensely good effects that screening and prevention has had so far. And now when we are in a technological world, it is our duty to integrate our knowledge in all the aspects to provide a good and reliable healthcare system to our public. The only strong points that my opposing teammates, housemates seem to have is that constant health monitoring causes anxiety and other psychological issues. Now, these psychological issues can be well handled by good counseling sessions and by abolishing ignorance with education. That is my main point, to abolish ignorance with education. Finally, I would say that for any nation to be on the path to prosperity, let it be economical prosperity or anything, the nation has to be healthy first. And to build a healthy nation, constant health monitoring is extremely important. Thank you.
Thank you, Kausalya. Vineet, your closing statements.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you. So health is indeed the most important wealth to possess, and it is essential to keep a check on our health to keep ourselves well. But the entire problem begins when we become overconscious and become the so-called health maniacs. And our worthy opponents have failed to address the key issues regarding the implementation of constant health monitoring than just merely proposing a utopian idea. We tend to fall prey to the false propaganda of the business mafia. Important thing to realize is that constant health monitoring and checkups are not the solution to our problems. Health monitoring is only good when it is used intelligently and selectively. Constant monitoring means bad for the poor patient, and a lot of medical resources get wasted as a result of this unnecessary testing. Be aware that primary prevention is always better than secondary prevention, and a healthy lifestyle can avoid the need of constant health checkups. Remember that death is always inevitable. So it's better to enjoy your life fully and die at once rather than dying each day in the pretext of leading a healthy life. Stay safe, everyone, and thank you for being a great audience.
Thank you, Vinit. Our last
Am I
speaker, Harish.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would like to conclude saying that if constant health monitoring can decrease the out-of-pocket expenditure, force the government to increase the healthcare spending initially, but save the money of the taxpayer at a later time, and has the potential to change the Indian attitude on health insurance and boost the economy, I would always stand by my argument that constant health monitoring does not do more harm than good, in spite of smaller loopholes existing, as suggested by the other house. The International Covenant on Economic, Social, Cultural Rights has granted every citizen in the world the right to health. As per a study conducted by the Harvard Medical School in 2015, it says that approximately 121 minutes are wasted by a patient for a hospital visit. So if I could do anything to make the accessibility of a basic human right more easier, I would do it at any cost. I would like to rest my case, but not my stance, and reinstate that the state should encourage constant health monitoring, which it is doing already. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Harish. That concludes this debate along with the closing statements. Sir, your words.
Nice. I should first congratulate the organizers for making a wonderful event, which kept us for almost 2 hours busy and happy. My foremost recognition and gratitude to the institution and the management and the managing director for permitting this, despite the lockdown, with all the hurdles. They have encouraged you, and the organizers have done beautifully well. So my thanks to the organization and the management, and also my appreciation to the organizers. And more than that, it is nothing without the wonderful participants who have come from different colleges. Nice to have you. Maybe in person it would have been more enlightening and a happier event, but something is better than nothing. So we have a technological way of meeting and talking and being together. So valuable time of yours have been spent to be with us, for which I thank, and I also pray to God to bless you all. Now, giving judgment is the toughest thing in life, because there are so many criteria in which you may win or you may lose. It doesn't mean if I have not given the first prize to anyone today, doesn't mean you are not an orator. Maybe you will become the world best orator one day, where somebody may even comment, oh my God, so many years back, one fool has not even judged you and he has never given you a merit. It doesn't mean that when you are not getting the award or the reward, you are less than anybody. It is always the incident that makes you keep going, and you learn and perfect yourself and improve yourself to ascend up, and ultimately you become unique. Like anyone, as we have the fingerprints, the corneal impressions, you will be unique in your own way, where there cannot be any comparison. This is what I have found in my life experience. Now, each one of you have, I have judged from the introduction, the sequences of your, the cognition of ideas and the coherence of thoughts, the relevancy and the consistency of your speech, the examples, facts, statistics, sources and quotes that you have brought in, and your voice modulation, your reachability, your clarity, your English, your style, your accent, your vocabulary, like that. And also, I was very keen in noting the time limit. So with all these factors, there may be some places where you would have lagged behind the others to lose. But I always congratulate the people, those who participate and lose, because they only are going to be the future successful candidates, because they want to come up, they will prove themselves. If not today, you see me someday where I will prove what I am. In that way, I know nobody is less, nobody is great, everybody is growing. And I always say, the best way to learn is to teach. So I've been doing it for decades. And every time when I go to the class, I get intoxicated. And it is many a time I have been a student to my students who have taught me a lot. So this goes like that in the profession. Now coming to this constant medical health monitoring, does more harm or it is good? It depends on the condition, situation, and to whom that you are monitoring. Monitoring the health is not only to an individual, is not only to an institution or one small sector or one town or a village. It is the whole community. At times it has to be considered as the whole world too. So we are going to monitor the people who are healthy and people who are acutely ill. So the condition in which, the sector in which, the region where you're going to throw the light on, to which, whether you're going to monitor continuously, constantly, or you're going to allow a latent time and you're going to be periodically doing it, all depending upon the need. Now, in the community, there is going to be a spread. Now, we cannot allow one small spark to be there. If it allowed, it can become a fire that may devastate even hectares of the forest. You know that. So it has to be analyzed, it has to be found out, it has to be recognized, its potency and capabilities has to be monitored, and it has to be put off. But if it is going to be an individual who is going to be acutely ill, he needs constant monitoring. He needs to be assessed every minute at times, even seconds. So we cannot compare the acutely ill person, the monitoring method, to that of the person who is healthy. I still remember in Madras Medical College when I was a houseman, one patient used to come from Jolarpet, always holding his left side of the chest and putting a very pathetic face and telling us, I have a heart problem, I have a heart problem. A person was very healthy and he never had any problem, but somehow someone has put him an idea that he has got a heart problem and he has developed that cardiac neurosis, and for many years that person suffered. And I have never seen him after some time. I don't know what has happened to him. On the contrary, my father from a village sent a patient who has come to Madras Medical College when I was doing houseman, who had the colonic cancer. He was operated immediately and all the treatments are given, and he went back. He was such a courageous person who could not afford, or he had the idea of that constant monitoring is a must for him. So he went back, he started living, and he was able to manage his day-to-day life, and he kept on living without much problem. So every time I go home on vacation or for some reasons, I used to ask my father, how is the patient? So he used to say, he's all right. I said, he had cancer, how come? He's not coming for a check. No, he's all right, he's taking care of himself. So this goes on. And one day, my question was answered by my father, he's no more. Then I asked him, my God, which hospital he went for his final treatment of his cancer? My father said, no. He didn't die of any cancer. He didn't go to any hospital. He was collecting the firewood in the forest where a bull gored him down to death. So this is what we see in extremes, where you see malaria-stricken areas where we constantly, vigilantly monitor one individual developing malaria. We keep on screening all the people who come with the fever with the idea that they may have malaria. Presumptive investigation and presumptive treatment is what WHO have already told. Whether you confirm it or not, nothing harm in treating him so that it cannot spread into the community. So there we have poured down a lot of manpower, lot of money, lot of schemes. The National Malaria Eradication Program has been there for decades with tons and tons of money poured onto it. It's still going on, and it's been doing good job despite that the disease goes on. Now, there is also a good thing when we do the investigations, we document it, and they are helpful for retrieving back to find out something that can be correlated in the researches. In that way, it is essential. But if somebody is going to come and ask you, doctor, please tell me, am I 100% healthy? We can never say. And especially when we go to a psychiatrist and say, sir, am I 100% all right? He will interrogate you, ask you hundreds of questions, and ultimately he will say certain percentage of psychiatric illness you have. And in physically, if you want to prove somebody who is 100% healthy, you have to do an array of investigations. Still, you don't know. You'll have to presumptively say by the percentage wise. But more than anything, any investigation is very supportive, very confirmative. Laboratory investigations are very supportive to the doctors who make the clinical diagnosis. So what is more important is the skill of the treating person, the clinical acumen that is more important, with which only the earlier days people have been living when there were no modern technology, and the instruments and the modes were not available, but still they kept on doing and taking care of the people. There were epidemics, there were sick people. The time where people are having a healthy life without any contamination, without any adulteration, without any radiation, so many things that we keep, but anyhow, we have to change ourselves depending upon the time to time and need to need. So in that way, documentation is very important, for which the laboratory investigations are highly essential and useful, but investigations has to be ordered by the person who has got the skill and the clinical acumen, who has examined the patient head to foot with all the history and everything what we teach, and ultimately he has to have his diagnosis, provisional diagnosis, and he has to expect this could happen in future. I just want to rule out because my clinical knowledge and experience, my clinical acumen says he may have this, or I want to rule out this. In that case, if they plan an investigation, it is going to be not cumbersome to the patient as well. It is not going to pinch upon the purse of the individual or the national economy. So ultimately what is required is the brain and the skill and the experience and the devotion and sincerity of the individual who decides on whether to do an investigation or not. This is what we have to practice, and it is slowly is getting changed by the incoming, the litigations against doctors, where you need to have the proof, where you have to prove black and white, where you have to have the evidence to say that because of this I have given this drug, or I treated the individual in this manner, like that. All these are forcing us to do sometimes, whether the investigations are essential or not, but they become mandatory from the point of view of the law and the point of protecting ourselves, and also in telling the patient. Sometimes patients themselves will go, they read this and that from somebody, and they always come and demand. And there's a wrong notion. Only when CT is done, he is properly diagnosed. When an X-ray is done, he is properly diagnosed. They never understand, despite so many other investigations that have come in, it has not replaced the X-ray or the ECG yet. The electrical conduction is done even today wonderfully by the ECG. But all ECGs are showing abnormalities or not meaning an abnormal heart. An abnormal ECG may be there in a normal heart. A normal ECG does not mean a normal heart too. So it is the interpreter, it is the experience of the individual that is going to make the diagnosis and the support, and these paramedical investigations are support to the clinical acumen of the person who is going to treat, and he has to order, and that has to be judicially properly, and with the justification it has to be planned, and that has to be supported. And there may be an individual who will come with the T wave inversion in V1, V2, V3. all T inversion, it is going to be owing to ischemia. You're going to say that it's going to be with the septum or the anterior wall by looking into it, forgetting that this can happen in a normal individual when there is going to be a T inversion in 1, 2, 3 of V leads, which could be a juvenile pattern existing. I had a patient who came to our ward where once he was diagnosed by somebody to say that he had a problem. So the history, as we went on, we went asking him once, what was your activities? Where have you been? What is the type of work you have done? Which is the hard work that you have done? So at that time, when we asked whether you have climbed up or walked a long distance, he said, yes, sir. I have walked from Madurai to Palani on a devotion that I have made my vow to walk to see the Lord over there. Imagine a person who could walk from Madurai to Palani and climb up the stairs of Palani hills. Should he need any problem to diagnose that he has got a heart problem? Though his ECG has shown abnormalities. So investigations are essential. They throw light. It doesn't mean they are the only parameters that has to be totally looked upon. They are not the only criteria that is going to put us into the right path. They are only as supporters. It is like people walking in the dark having a torchlight, but people with the right vision and the right practice can walk even in the dark without the light. That's what we have experienced. And now I am to say that investigations are essential provided the person who is treating has the clinical acumen telling him that this is mandatory to have confirmation on the particular issues of diagnosis, or it is going to be documented, or we have to serially monitor him whether it's going to go down or come out of the problem. But periodically checking every, after 40, just like that, if you go and have a general health checkup, when it is economically possible and feasible, and there is no brunt on the individual or the national economy, nothing wrong in doing it. But as somebody mentioned, it should not be an obsession that there are people who keep on monitoring. They want proof for everything. Every day they want to check up. See, if somebody is going to have a blood sugar monitored this moment, after some time it will be showing different value. After some time it will be showing different value. Even if you test 100 times in a day, it is going to show a different value. So how is the explanation is going to be given? We can only give a range of this much. So just to find out whether you are in the right path, do you have to constantly keep on monitoring, spending your money and working yourself, taking the blood, this and that is not mandatory. So every investigation has to be planned properly. And if it is mandatory, never hesitate to do it. If it is not, then there is no need. This is what I ultimately look upon. This is what the younger generation has to know. Improve your skill. Let your mind make a diagnosis first. In our days, when we want to refer a patient to the specialist, as a family physician, we have to commit our diagnosis on the reference letter. So the consultant or the specialist will look in and they will give a letter back to telling us, yes, your diagnosis was right, but we probably feel that you would have looked in this line also. So if we, with the experience, look in that line with the parameters of investigations, we have found this to be this. So with your treatment, please add up this. This is how the light was thrown up by the experienced people earlier, and we were able to manage in our days. But now everything has to be only by proof and only by papers. Then you are not going to examine the patient. You are not going to go patiently asking, talking to him, taking the history, watching him every day, looking into every parameters that develop and the clinical signs that erupt out. If you are not going to be good in that, whatever the investigations, you will be treating only the paper, not the person. In my view, treat the patient, not the papers. Papers are essential to give the better support to the patient, but a patient is a patient, a paper is a paper. With this, I conclude and thank for the wonderful opportunity given by the management, the organizers, and the participants. And the results will be handed over to the organizers, and it will be intimated to every one of you. And I personally thank Ms. Batul Jahir, Vedant Baba, Janani Balagangaran, Vinit Lohitash, and Prashant, Ms. Reha Surana, Ms. Kausalya, and Mr. Harish. I think everyone have done well. So we'll be giving the first and second prize, and also one special mention about So 3 will be intimated to you with the discussion with the organizers. Thank you. Thank you a lot. God bless you all. Good day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your words, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to thank our principal madam for the support. And ma'am, do you have some words to share with us?
Hello.
Yes, madam, please.
Yes, thank you everyone. But I also like to congratulate the organizing team for bringing up this wonderful and excellent minds together today. It was really a very nice experience for us to hear all the students in this lockdown after a long gap of 6 months. Yeah. Once again, thank you all the participants. I think almost it is 2 hours over now, and we have heard a lot of important things from our Vice Principal also. Thank you, sir, for your.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, all the participants. Thank you, students, organizing teams, everyone. Wish you all the best. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
All the.
Now I would like to call upon Indumati to give the vote of thanks.
Hello,
Yes, please.
am I audible? Now, as we have come to the end of the session, it's my privilege to have been asked to deliver the thanks on this special occasion. Myself, Indumati, on behalf of Affinity 2020 team, Karpaka Vinayaga Institute of Medical Sciences and Research Center, would like to wholeheartedly thank Dr. Andamani sir for being a pillar of support and also being a part of today's session on such a short notice. We remain extremely grateful, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
I must also mention a deep sense of appreciation for the speakers who have enlightened us by their great words. Thank you for making this session lively and dynamic. I would also like to sincerely thank the Managing Director of Karpaka Vinayaga Institute of Medical Sciences, Dr. Annamale Raghupati sir, for his support, and Principal Ma'am, Dr. Sufala Sunil Vishwasharao Ma'am, for her guidance and encouragement, and also Amar sir for the technical support. Thank you, sir. I also owe gratitude to Dr. Bhatia Coaching Institute for their contribution and Agam for their social media partnership. I'd also like to extend my thanks to my co-coordinators who have worked day and night for successfully organizing this event, and also the Caledrion's 2017 batch for their constant support. Last but not the least, I thank each and every one of them who attended this event, making it a huge success. Thank you all. Looking forward to meet you all for the next year Affinity 2021. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, madam.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, dear children, very nice. It was a wonderful day. Thank you all personally. Karthi, regarding the result, I will make an entry and send it to you by WhatsApp.